Welcome to the Biology 182 Evolution series. This video will provide evidence that supports the theory of evolution. At the end of this video, students should be able to identify the various types of evidence that substantiate evolutionary change. A substantial body of evidence exists to support the theory of evolution. These include examples of species found in the fossil record and the fossils found distributed throughout the continents, and the biogeography of island species. In addition, examples of various species becoming anatomically similar to others in the same habitat, and selective breeding or domestication of species. Finally, evidence by convergent evolution through anatomical structures, developmental similarities, and molecular characteristics all provide evidence to support the theory of evolution. The fossil record shows numerous examples of ways in which some species that have become extinct show a relationship between other extinct and extant or living today species. Such species are known as transitional forms. In the evolution of tetrapods from fish, we can see fossils of the Dictylic. When looking at the transition, it is important to note that the first ancestor to transition form took 7 to 10 million years, and then another 10 million years to transition to the primitive tetrapod. The Dictylic had broad skull, unlike its fish predecessors. It had eyes on the top of its head instead of on the sides, allowing it to see above the surface of the water when searching for prey. It also had a flexible neck in lieu of a streamlined form of the fish, but still had fins similar to its fish ancestors. However, the anterior fins were much larger than that of the fish, and they contained a primitive wrist and 5 bones similar to fingers, much like the terrestrial tetrapods we see today. This transition organism would have been able to be in very shallow water, possibly even leaving the water for short amounts of time to stalk prey. The next indicator shows species evolve from pre-existing species, as seen from studying island biogeography. Most islands are home to species of plant and animal specific to their location only, but also find relative species on coastal mainlands nearby. During the Ice Age, the gray fox could travel between Santa Barbara and California across the Channel Islands. As the ice melted, the foxes found that islands were separated from the mainland species. Over the last 17,000 years, the island foxes diverged enough through natural selection to become a distinct species unable to interbreed with the mainland gray fox. Convergent evolution is where 2 distinct species share a common attribute or characteristic, although they're not related and are not part of the same ecosystem. These traits have arisen independently from one another. The characteristics are analogous in the structure, or known as convergent traits. An easy way to remember the analogy or convergence is the same function, different ancestor. These traits, for example, birds' wings, insect wings, bat wings, all arose independently from one another, and they all allow flight in the organism. Remember that every organism can be classified using taxonomy. They all follow the domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, system, pathway. All 3 organisms are in the eukarya domain and are part of the kingdom Animalia. The butterfly is part of the phylum Arthropoda in the class Insecta, where birds and bats are phylum Chordata. Birds are class Aves and bats are class Mammalia. You can see in the bone structure of the wings, they are all very different in design, but perform the same function. Selective breeding, also called artificial selection, is used with the intent of modifying or manipulating an organism to bring desired traits as the wild type or most prevalent in the population. Naturally grown watermelon has large black seeds and small thin white seeds. With the advent of artificial selection, growers could breed watermelon that would have no seeds or only a few thin white seeds. These were more attractive to the consumer and allowed the farmers to charge more for the modified plant. Another way we see this is through domesticated dogs. All domestic dogs are in the same genus and species, Canis lupus familiaris, and they are descendants of the gray wolf, Canis lupus. Original derivations of the breed of dog stemmed from traditional methods like mutations or adaptation to the environment. Humans interfered and began crossing organisms that had desirable traits for the outcomes they were using the dogs for. Some were good hunters or good shepherders, and those were important functions early on. Now, humans are making more trendy dogs like a Labradoodle, a Cockapoo, or a Puggle, and these are seen based on the whim of human desire. The final pieces of evidence for evolution occur from comparative biology through homology. Homologous traits come from the same lineage, but perform different functions. Remember, structure determines function, and through evolutionary change, leading to the diversity of organisms. Each organism maintained adaptations that were selected for use in varying functions. This led to the organism's variation in structure as dictated by the environment. An example from comparative biology comes in the form of vestigial structures. These are remnants of organs or structures useful in previous ancestors of extant organisms. There's a similarity of the structure that is no longer functional. Some of the examples we see in humans are the erector pili. Those are the muscles around the hair follicles that make your hair stand up when you're frightened, leading to goosebumps. In ancestors, the erector pili was used to make hair stand up in order to make the organism look larger and scarier in the face of a predator. Another vestigial organ is wisdom teeth in humans. Often, these need to be removed because the jaw does not have enough room for them. However, in ancestors, the teeth were a replacement for the tough grinding and chewing molars that were lost, but a necessity for their diet. The appendix also functions with gut-enhancing microbes and infection-fighting lymph tissue. This was relevant in previous ancestors and no longer quite as relevant today. Males' nipples stem from all human beings with the default as being female until the Y chromosome activates and the organism becomes sexually dimorphic and the traits begin being expressed. They are not harmful, so from an evolutionary perspective, it is easier to just leave them be than the work it would take to remove them from the organism. Developmental homologies also show evidence for evolution. Looking at phylum Chordata, subphylum Vertebrata, we can see the similarities during embryologic development between these organisms: a fish, a salamander, turtle, chick, rabbit, and human. This reinforces the idea that they share ancestry and developed from the same lineage. During development, each organism has a post-anal tail, a notochord, which becomes the vertebral column, a hollow nerve cord running down the dorsal side that becomes the central nervous system, and pharyngeal or gill slits. Finally, molecular homologies show the relatedness of organisms within a lineage of shared common ancestry. These organisms share the same genes and, moreover, a similar genetic makeup or amino acid sequence of the gene. In the example looking at the human hemoglobin polypeptide, which carries oxygen in the blood from the lungs to the body and carbon dioxide from the body back to the lungs, the rhesus monkey shares 95% of the identical amino acids coding for the hemoglobin. The chicken shares 69% of the identical amino acids in the sequence, where lampreys or a jawless fish shares 14%. The evolutionary relatedness between humans and rhesus monkeys is much greater than humans and a chicken or humans and a lamprey, although they are all vertebrate animals. Students should be able to differentiate between homology and analogy. Students should be able to describe how fossil record and biogeography support evolution. Students should be able to understand how vestigial organs represent evolutionary relationships. Students should be able to identify evolutionary relationships using anatomy, embryology, and molecular homology. Students should be able to describe convergent evolution and artificial selection, also known as selective breeding.